Hello, everyone. Today is the day after Christmas, the 26th of December, 2022. Welcome as you come in. I thought I'd do a real quick update because of some things that have happened. And of course, the title here says a little bit of it. Senator Rand Paul made a statement a few days ago regarding this $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that the Congress has put out. And frankly, he came right out and said that they are deliberately destroying our country. They are deliberately destroying it. Something that I've said for a long time. Now, he didn't actually use the word deliberately, but he said the end result, of course, is that it's destroying the country, and that's exactly right. I don't think I've said anything different than that for quite a long time. I pretty much made that statement that our leaders are our worst enemies because they are about giving money and support to everyone else in the entire world except Americans, and they use all kinds of excuses for that. Again, hello everybody as you come in. But the fact that Rand Paul said this, and interestingly, he had Senator Mike Lee there with him to make these statements, and there was another senator, I think it was Ron Johnson, I'm not sure. But I was happy to see Mike Lee stand up and say something as well. Now, they're really kind of powerless, actually. I think at this point they tried to put up a wall to slow this down or to stop it, but the evil is just too pervasive throughout the government and throughout our institutions to stop at this point, which is why I've said that's really all we can do is prep, pray, stay out of the way, right? To understand that the intelligence community and the banking system and all of that surrounds that is our most dangerous domestic enemy. I've also talked about the fact that the plan to destroy America is not new, that this did not come up in the last decade, the last several decades. Actually, it's been over a century ago. And I've talked about it before. I've talked about some of the documents I saw, some of the things I saw about what the secret societies were planning. And some of you are aware of that. I'm not going to go through all those here. I've mentioned them before. But basically, they said the same things that Albert Pike said in the letter that has been attributed to him, saying how they were going to take over things, and especially how they were going to destroy Christianity per se, and the United States in general. The Albert Pike letter that a lot of you were probably familiar with. Whether he actually wrote that or not, as I pointed out in the past, that's probably open to debate, but the information that's in that letter was spot on, and it's come true to the T. And so, really, the idea was, and is to make the people of the United States bleed out their treasury and their blood in useless perpetual warfare, in uh, debt, in all of those types of things, so that basically we become slaves and there's nothing we can do to protect ourselves. And that's exactly where we are. The American people were always the problem for the evil ones, because the American people got a taste of the perfect law of liberty that James and Jesus both talked about. And so that is being destroyed. Again, I think most of you understand when I talk about those types of religious, spiritual things, that I am not a traditionalist Christian by any means. I look at specifically Pauline Christianity with a jaundiced eye. I'm not here today to defend or explain that. I've done that quite a bit in the past. But I'm going to cover a little portion of that subject here in a little while too. So we'll get to that. Let's see. We all need to stop it. Yeah, I agree. There's really only one way to address this, and it's like, as I said before, prep, pray, stay out of the way. Get out of Babylon the best you can. Try not to support the system. At the very least, try to move into a place where you have a little bit more chance to survive if you have an ability to do that. And certainly don't allow your sons and especially your daughters to go into the military. This is an evil system now. I have family members in the military right now, and those who are thinking about going in, and they're not even asking me anymore what I think. And you know what? At some point in time, you just have to realize that even family doesn't get it, won't get it, and are hell bent on their own destruction. And there's just no way to stop that. You explain it to them, but the money, the propaganda, the supposed opportunities, and all of that, they just don't see the real issues. And there's a scripture. I might as well say there's a scripture. I'm kind of getting hoary headed now. Uh, I've explained why a couple of times in the past and what I do about that. But at any rate, there's a scripture in Isaiah, and it says, "The ancient, he is the head, and the prophet that telleth lies, he is the tail," and that the people should have respect for the hoary head. Hoary meaning white. That doesn't mean Joe Biden. I mean, there's some other factors involved here, but at any rate, the point is that even my take on things is not really appreciated by those who should at least take it into consideration that I've been around the block a few times, and of course they don't want to do that. And I understand everybody has to make their own way, but man, we're headed towards some really bad things. So again, Senator Rand Paul admits that they're destroying our country, and actually we already are destroyed. They're just mopping us up, is what they're doing at this point, and they're doing it in such a way that we really don't notice that it's happening. Like that old saying, the greatest trick the devil ever was able to accomplish was telling us or making us believe he doesn't exist, and boy, isn't that true. Okay, so along with those same lines, we've got a lot of things happening geopolitically around the world. Somebody just mentioned here a few minutes ago the assault on our border. Of course, that goes right along with what I was saying just a few minutes ago about the deliberate destruction of this country. Okay, and we're not going to be able to stop it, ladies and gentlemen, and God's not going to stop it, because that's just the way things work. And I've explained how that's all going to go down very soon. We're in the process now, and Russia and their allies will finish us off. And I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, they." Oh yeah, I'm afraid so, and it's a tragedy. I'm not happy about this at all, but it's just the writing's on the wall. I keep seeing the propaganda in the West saying that Russia's on its last legs and that Putin's begging for peace, and they're totally spinning everything that's coming out of Russia. Everything. Now, there was a strike again on the Engels Air Base today, or an attempted strike with a drone. I don't understand how the Russian air defenses are allowing these things to get through. Now, it didn't destroy any property there or any equipment, but apparently the debris again, from the reports that I'm hearing, did kill a few, I guess 3 soldiers or so who got in the way of the debris that was coming down. But it should never have gotten that far. So something else is going on there. Again, I'm not sure what it is. I thought that the Russians would have patched this up from the last time that happened about 2 weeks ago. But the point here is and the real issue is that Ukraine and NATO are attacking inside Russian territory. And there will be all kinds of excuses why they can do that, because Russia is attacking the internal parts of Ukraine. But number one, the U.S. should never have gotten involved in this. There are reasons why we continue to get involved with European affairs, and our founding fathers warned against doing that for the very reason that we're seeing now. And we're getting opportunists and very evil people that are pushing us towards this thing. Will they keep us out of an actual boots on the ground war? I don't know. I think they'd even like that. So you need to stay back. Now, is it all scripted? Yeah, okay, could be. As I said before, Putin might have a double idea here. I don't know. I do believe he believes in keeping Russia together, that this is an existential threat to Russia, and they're not going to allow Russia to be destroyed or somebody else dictate who their leadership is going to be, which is what the West wants to do. But in another way, yeah, what's going on? I don't know. You really can't trust anybody, but I do believe, bottom line, that Putin wants to. I heard he wants disclosure on Tataria. Well, yeah, that's even mentioned in the scriptures. Did you know that? I won't go into that today. I'm not sure how extensive it is, but certainly our history has been twisted. I'm a historian, trained historian, and I can see the lies in history, even the way it's taught today. Or I can see that. So things don't surprise me that our history is probably to somewhat extent artificial. Certainly, you can see that in just the last few years, much less thousands of years ago, which is again why I have a lot of questions about the New Testament itself and the Old Testament too. But there are other reasons why I'm very suspicious of the New Testament, and I'm very, very careful about what's going on here. Okay, so there was that attack on the Ingalls Air Base. That's escalating things a little bit more. It's not going to change the outcome of the war. This is all propaganda for the West, so they can say that they have a chance in beating Russia. And I don't see that happening, and neither do people like Colonel Douglas Macgregor, which I've told you about before. So that's going on. The other thing is, of course, we had the disgusting display of Zelensky in the Congress, and the Congress practically worshiping him, even flying the Ukrainian flag inside the chambers there. That's just totally disgraceful, but that's what we've turned into. That's what we are. So that didn't really surprise me. Ukraine is the way that right now they're bleeding us from our treasury, but also from our morality. Yes, what little we had left, and also soon, actually it's already underway, our blood. And people are stupid enough to allow themselves to be sucked into this thing over there, supposedly fighting for the freedom of Ukraine. Yeah, right. Well, they've already suspended the church there. Zelensky's already said the church, you can't discuss Christian things. The main church there has been basically censored, really prohibited from exercising, and yet we're still saying it's a democracy. First of all, is a bad term. It is a democracy. That's the problem. It's not a free country. Our whole vocabulary has been turned on its head. So all that's going on. And then I thought that another thing that was important was that Greece has in the past, this was talked about on the Duran this morning with Alex Christoforou and Alexander Mercouris, who are both in the Duran, and they have their own channels as well. And they were discussing about this situation with Greece where, I don't know if you understand the history of Cyprus and what was going on in Cyprus back in the 60s and between them and Turkey and all that. It's really not important, too important right now. But the bottom line is that Greece and Russia have been fairly close for quite some time. And of course, the EU and NATO, and particularly the United States, don't like that because, they're all supposed to be vassals of Washington, D.C. Well, apparently, Greece has now agreed, under pressure from the EU, NATO, and Washington, D.C., to send Russian S-300 anti-missile defense systems, which Russia gave to Greece under a contract, under a treaty, an agreement that's just for them, that they're not going to do anything with those S-300s as far as giving them to anybody else, particularly Ukraine. Now, there's more to the background story to that, but that's kind of the bottom line. The Greeks will say, well, Russians, have reneged on some of their contracts with us, and it's, with their support of Turkey and all this kind of nutsy stuff. But the bottom line is, Russia gave the S-300 system to Greece, and now Greece is going to give it to Ukraine. Now, will that make a difference in the actual final outcome of all this? No. But again, it's bleeding your money, your treasure. Because what's going to happen is that those Patriot missiles, right? Those Patriot systems that we keep promising Ukraine, but Ukraine really can't integrate those into their defense system. It's not going to work like that. So, now, they might still get one system, but what's happening here is that Greece is sending their S-300 system to Ukraine. Well, then they will get a Patriot system, which isn't really all that much better, if at all. But they're making this swap so that the military-industrial complex and the thieves and the murderers in NATO, the EU, and particularly at Washington, D.C., can make some money and also tie their allies, actually their vassals, their slave states, which is what Europe is at this point, tie them closer to where they can't make their own decisions. This is the most evil, horrible thing. I mean, this isn't diplomacy. This is warfare by deceit, which, by the way, is a Mossad motto. If you all didn't know, the Mossad motto is by deceit thou shalt wage war, by deception thou shalt wage war. And some people say that's legitimate. Well, no, not when you're using it unrighteously. Any unrighteous use of a weapon is unrighteousness, and you deserve to be destroyed when you do that. And that's really where we're headed. So, at any rate, that's bad news as far as I'm concerned. All of these things that are happening, Russia is going to be forced to act, and the West is not prepared. I mean, if it comes to a nuclear exchange, we'll still lose. Everybody loses. But you got to, pardon me, I'm burping. I had breakfast this morning. You've got to understand that for the elites, it's a win-win situation. If they defeat Russia and defeat the parts of the world that stand against the hegemony of, who is this? Liza? Hi, Liza Jean. Thank you for being here. She's a moderator, one of my moderators that's kind enough to come on and make sure that my room stays clean. No matter how this ends up for the elites, they consider it a win-win situation. See, they've put you in a place where what they want is death and destruction. So whether it comes because they're bleeding you dry of your resources, telling you that there's this problem with the weather, you read between the lines here, although some people are saying we're going into an ice age now. But it's all baloney anyway. It's all a way to come up with a new system to take your money and your resources. That's all it is. And the end result is, of course, as I've said, they want to destroy you, right? So if they can't get it that way, if they have to destroy the world with a nuclear holocaust, that's actually not a good term, but a nuclear war, well, that's okay too, because the end result is the destruction of mankind. Yeah, Russia banned GMO. Thanks, Liza Jean. Yeah, they and that's actually some of Europe did too, but I suspect that since some of that happened here not too long ago, the pressure from the United States and their evil designs, the Europeans aren't going to get this monetary assistance or that financial assistance or this defense assistance or whatever if they don't bow down to the corporations in the United States. So I suspect that probably a lot of Europe is reneged on that to a good portion. I don't know that for a fact, but it wouldn't surprise me. So I wanted to give you those updates this morning. When is Russia going to actually do this total offensive against Ukraine and try to push NATO into a position where they'll act one way or the other? Well, I'm not really sure. The basic idea has been that Russia would wait until the ground is frozen so that they can use their armored vehicles, etc., and not have any hindrance on their movements. I don't know. Some people are now, as a matter of fact, Alex Christoforou this morning on his channel on YouTube was saying that there is an estimate now by a defense group that the offensive will probably not start until April. I don't see that. I don't think that the Russians have any intention of waiting until April. It really would not benefit them, other than if they're trying to still, force the West to realize the precarious situation they're in, and that Russia feels like they have time to do that. As I've said from the very beginning, and I understood what Putin and Russia were trying to do. They were trying to ease the Ukrainian government into allowing the people in Donbass to live with Russia, because that's what those people in eastern Ukraine wanted, and because of all the situations from 2014, Russia was trying to push that issue. But Russia tries to deal with the Western governments, and they can't do that any longer. And they finally realized that. But Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, has been warning them about that for a very long time. That they can't trust the Western governments. That they will break their agreements every single time, like Greece just did with the S-300. You see how this always works? So I guess what's going to happen is in my estimation, I don't think they're going to wait until April. I think that they've got to realize that the longer they wait, the more the West will be able to prepare, and it'll actually be worse. I don't think that it's wise. I'm just saying, I'm just commenting on how, as a military officer, and I think Scott Ritter would agree with me, and certainly Douglas Macgregor, Colonel Douglas Macgregor, we're all not pretty much the same sheet of music. That, Russia, if it wants to survive, it can't give the West any more leeway. It's got to act, and it's got to act decisively. And it could go very bad for the rest of us. But remember, the people in D.C. are the ones that are responsible for this. I don't hold the Russians responsible at all, and I don't think anybody that knows the history will do that either. Let me see what this. They will never fight in the spring when it's all mud. Well, yeah, that's why I say I'm not saying they wouldn't do that, but and some people are saying, well, their forces aren't ready yet, that they haven't quite got it. They haven't quite got it. Their forces fully prepared yet. I wouldn't bet on that. I wouldn't bet on that. I think they're fully ready to go. I think I'm not sure what the commander there is really holding out for. Maybe they're trying to do some last-minute negotiations or whatever, but I don't think so. I think the Russians are done negotiating. So what they want to do, and this attack on the air base is another example of what will happen in warfare. Your enemy is preparing to do something, and you want them to act on your timetable. You want to force them to react to your choosing of the time and place, not their own. So my guess is that these attacks on the air base and the continuing shelling by Ukraine on the poor folks of Donbass there. I know that Russia's attacking the internal electrical grids, etc., in Ukraine, but they're not really intentionally firing on what you would consider to be civilian targets or infrastructure, meaning, like hotels, apartment buildings, playgrounds, stuff like that. But at any rate, what they might be trying to do is to force, I'm talking about NATO, U.S., and Ukraine. They might be, by these attacks, trying to force the Russian leadership into acting outside of their own timetable, outside of their own choice of time and place. And if the Russian command is smart, they will stick with their plan. Okay, they will stick with their time and their place, their choice of the time and place to do what they're going to do. They're not going to be forced into it by these small attacks that are occurring. Although, like I said, I can't understand why they would allow these things to penetrate the Russian airspace. That's just crazy. I don't get that. But sometimes that's part of the deception. So, I've got to kind of let that go for right now. Surovikin, the Russian commander, the overall Russian commander in Ukraine, in the entire Ukraine situation, he's not stupid. So I think he'll probably follow his situation here that he's already got planned out. Let's see, what is this here? Alex is talking about FTX and Bitcoin right now. You mean Alex Christoforou? Okay. Yeah, that's another issue. Oh, you mean Alex Jones. Yeah, well, I gave up on Alex Jones some time ago, and I don't bother with him anymore. Again, I won't go into I'm not saying he hasn't done some good work in the past or even continuing now, but I just can't handle his constant grifting and merchandising. I can listen to somebody like the Duran for a half an hour and get more information than I can get from Alex in 3 hours. It just isn't worth it to me. Okay, and you're right, he waffles too much. I'm not interested in dealing with somebody who for instance, giving Trump a continuing chance when Trump will not come out and go against the OWS. Alex cries and says, "Oh, the children are being hurt and all that," but he still supports that goofhead, that buffoon, who I think has evil intents. I'm sorry, that's how I've looked at it for a long time, and I'm not changing either. I don't see any reason why I should. Which kind of brings me to the final little thing. We could talk about a lot more that's going on. Bill Gates, for instance, is already talking about another big problem coming up soon. I don't want to say what it is because, of course, that'll alert the people that watch for those and the AI that watches for that information. But they're planning on doing all this. They want to have shutdowns to protect the climate. They want to have shutdowns to do the and force new procedures on you. Bill Gates is one of the most evil, man. How he can keep going? There's only one reason why he does, because the government's supporting. And frankly, I wish that those nations that have had arrest warrants out for him, etc., along with Soros and all those other bad boys, I wish they'd just employ their special operations forces to take him out. They would be doing the world a favor. Yeah, I know somebody will come up in their place, but they still need to do that, and I don't know why they don't. I don't believe that would be that difficult to pull off. I mean, I can kind of see some operational possibilities. If I can, certainly those folks can, but they just don't, and I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Okay, so with all of that, again, a lot of things going on. Uh, Boy, don't stop getting ready for this thing. And when it finally pops, I mean the whole deal, it's going to be bad, and it's not too far off. All right, let me finish up on this last thing, and I'll let you go because I've already been going for almost a half an hour. I'm kind of ending on a little spiritual discussion here. I kind of do that a lot lately, but I think it's necessary for a lot of reasons. And this one's on a personal note for me. Uh, Again, you know how I feel about Pauline Christianity, the New Testament. I understand how that all developed. I'm not on board with it 100%. The basic concepts of piety and righteousness, as I've discussed many, many times, I'm thoroughly on board with. But some of the other things that are in there are a problem. And if you don't know Happy holidays, everybody, and Merry Christmas. Well, Merry Christmas is over with, so Happy New Year now. If you don't know my take on those things, look at my religion series on the playlists, and look at my Eisenman series also on the playlist, and that'll give you an idea. And there's a lot of other stuff there too, like things about my personal life in the past and all of that. Some of the reasons why I did what I did, and anyway, I'm always sticking my neck out. So, but I've always looked at things seriously and tried to analyze. And people say, "Well, no, Roy, you just have to use faith." No, because faith alone isn't enough. Because you can have faith, as I've said many, many times. You can have faith. You can believe that a little yellow dog wagging its tail in Nebraska is God, but that doesn't make it so. And you can have all the emotional feelings and all of that to go along with it, to support your feelings, your beliefs. That still doesn't make it true. So you have to have evidence, right? Paul talked about that. It was one of the good things he said, and certainly it's in other scriptures and other places where God wants us to reason with him. He wants us to, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. And I could get into some of the detail of that, but basically that's saying the right thing. So what I'm saying is this: it's been many, many years where I've taken stands. I'm not always 100% right. Some of my ideas about what was happening in the world weren't quite 100% square on. Well, nobody's ever are, but I think the direction that I was saying basically has turned out to be true. And the reason why I could see some of this is because I'm not a follower of the mainstream. The mainstream is where everybody goes to have a nice life and to not have any difficulties, anything that's going to rock their boat. Well, for some reason or other, and I'm not patting myself on the back here, but for some reason or other, I've never really been able to do that. And a lot of people don't understand some of those decisions that I've made, some of the things I've done in my life, although, maybe I didn't do them perfectly or whatever. Um, the fact of the matter is that those things taught me lessons, and I'm still paying the price even today. People don't want to, it'd be a lot better for me if I had been say a Bernie Madoff, stealing people's money, millions and billions of dollars, maybe even being an axe murderer, maybe being a fraudster of some sort. It seems like, or Hugh Hefner for that matter, people have more respect for people like that than they do for people that honestly are trying to seek their way and may not follow the mainstream in that regard, but their intentions are to find out the truth. And sometimes you have to take some hits to do that. And where I'm going with this is here. In my studies, as most of you know who watched my Eisenman series and some of my religion series, I made the point that although a lot of the scholars think that whatever, particularly Eisenman, this is one of the things where Eisenman and I had a disagreement. Professor Eisenman was the professor at the University of California, Long Beach, who is one of the world's foremost authorities on the Dead Sea Scrolls. I can't really say I'm a colleague of his, but we're definitely friends. And he taught me a lot. He was primarily responsible for my understanding of the Dead Sea Scrolls and my history lessons. But at any rate, he would not agree with this point, but he said, in his estimation, giving any credence at all to the concept of Jesus, that whatever James was, the brother of Jesus, who is well known even in the not just in the the New Testament, but in Josephus and in some other historical writings of the period, that whatever James was, that's what Jesus was too. And I took issue with that, although I agreed with it to some extent. And this is what I'm going to say, okay? This is probably going to shock some people, but that's all right. It seems like it doesn't matter what I say. Somebody will find something to hold against me for it, but I'll say it anyway. Because I don't really, I care. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it doesn't. I try not to let it influence my short or long range viewpoints. And, I'll examine things. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I want to know. But no, I'm not going to get into the begotten thing there, remnant. No. See, that's all English translation of Hebrew and Greek, and you don't really know what it actually said. So I've already explained all that, and sorry to get off topic. I let people do that. Jesus was begotten the same way James was. I'll just tell you that. Period. Bottom line. End of story. Okay. So what I'm going to say is this, and it's probably a little off topic from everything else I've been talking about here lately, but what I've decided is that I used to think that possibly because in the New Testament it shows Jesus being around sinners generally because he said it's not the healthy that need a physician but the sick and all of that. He's shown, making friends with tax collectors and prostitutes and, people like that. And the Jamesian viewpoint, the Qumranian viewpoint, the Messianic movement viewpoint would be to be totally separate from all of those people, to not enter into their company because they might their mere actions can ruin your purity, pollute you. either because you'll lose your defenses and do the same things they do, or that their sins are bad and that they're going to rub off on you. Um, yeah, that's right. Thank you, Angry Scandinavian. You're talking about and I brought that up some time ago about Michael Heiser talking about that the word begotten is a mistranslation and it's actually a special one. Yeah, a unique one. Thank you, which proves my point to that other individual who made that statement. And I've known that about that for a long time. Okay, I've talked about that for years. But anyway, so I've applied some of that in my experience over the last few years, and it's funny and it's tragic. I do believe that there was a rift between Jesus and his brother James, even though they were very similar in this idea of the two great commandments, right? Piety and righteousness. I think they were on the same page there. But I do think that Paul saw that there was this rift between James and his older brother Jesus. And Paul was an opportunist to then put himself in the middle of that and wedged that difference for his own benefit and the benefit of Rome, rabbinic Judaism as it later became, and the Herodian establishment there in Jerusalem. I still look at that same way, but with a slightly different understanding, I think, now. Because of my past, people want to hold things against me and not hear what I have to say because it goes against their personal traditions, what the mainstream wants, which is kind of interesting because, if I were of a different persuasion, I would, I don't want to say it here because that could cause some problems, but read between the lines. If I were a different persuasion than what I was, which was, of course, I was very much into the man-woman relationship and even extended that out to some extent. Again, I'm talking between the lines here. Look at my playlists if you don't know what I'm talking about, but I think most of you do. Uh, you know, that is a real division that I found out. I didn't really believe that was the case at first, but I'm seeing more and more and I know people don't want to hear this and they're going to think I'm full of crap, but I really think that those issues are one of the big dividing lines because this is what I found out. People that are wholly or even partially inside the traditional Christian system in particular close their minds to anything that's outside of what their preachers, their popes, their priests, or even their reading of the New Testament, say, gives them. And they immediately presume that somebody like me is somebody that needs to be avoided. Does it bother me? Well, sure, to some extent, but I don't let it affect me for a long time, and I think my history shows that. But where I'm going with this is this. I thought for a long time, when I really got into the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Hebrew and studying the problems with the New Testament, I really got to the point where I thought, like Eisenman did, that whatever James was, Jesus was too. And like I said, I saw a division there, but I think it was even more of a rift than I realized, because what I find out today is that those people that are so opposed to what I've stood for, which basically was really about liberty. Maybe they didn't like my form of it, but that's really what I was standing for. But the point is, they would rather accept axe murderers, idolaters, criminals, and a lot of other bad things than take into consideration why somebody does something, not necessarily what they did. Remember, I was telling you that when they did this thing to me, when the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, and the state of Utah did all these things to me, they weren't trying to change my behavior. They wanted to change why I was doing it, to attack my spiritual roots, my commitments. So again, what I'm getting at is this. I think Jesus probably did find that he had better friends amongst the sinners, amongst the prostitutes, amongst those who maybe, didn't do things quite the way they should have for whatever reason. Because you know what? By and large, they're not as judgmental and as much steeped in error as those who consider themselves Christians. I've been actually experiencing this for 3 decades, maybe 4, actually 4. So the Christians and those who profess those things, and I know I'm coming down hard on you, but if you denigrate, and I predicted this was going to happen back in the 80s when I wrote my book on A Thunder for a Word, I said that if you turn your back on the man-woman relationship, and that includes the way the patriarchs and the early leaders, fathers of the faith, and I don't mean the Christian faith, I mean going way, way back to the very roots of mankind. If you turn your back on that, then you will reap things that would be really bad, and I've predicted that, and you're seeing it today. And I don't want to be too specific because it'll get me knocked off of here, but I guess what I'm telling you is that you guys who have turned your back on what I've had to say and want to hold me in some kind of derision because I don't follow your particular regimentation. I think I would rather spend time with the sinners than with you, because at least they don't throw me out. They don't cast me out. They don't cast me aside. Even if I talk about their shortcomings, and don't think I don't have shortcomings, or don't think that I don't know that I have shortcomings. Of course I do. But I've explained all of this before on how important this whole concept is that I've been talking about for so long. And I know I'm being somewhat nebulous here, but I have to, okay? I have to be. Maybe I'll do a specific recorded video and put it up on Odyssey where it's not going to be censored, and I can explain further. But I think most of you who follow me know exactly what I'm getting to, right? So I guess I've got to change my viewpoint and not agree with Eisenman that Jesus would have been wholly separate from the sinners, because his own people that were so pious and prudish and would fly apart like glass if one little thing wasn't right in their minds, they probably did persecute him for it, because that has been my experience. I think I explained in my book, The Crimson Thread, that Jesus spent time in the city of On in Egypt twice. Once when he was a young man, according to the story. They don't say where he was in Egypt. Some people think Alexandria, but I think it was On, Heliopolis, as I've explained before, the city of the sun, which was the Hebrew place not far from Goshen. Is actually part of Goshen where the Israelites were originally. But he went there supposedly as a child, and then he went back as an adult to study and to see, because On had become a city so so divided between evil and good. And he went there to experience it in a very short time so that he could make some decisions. And again, I think he found that the regimentation of the religions and of the cultures that closed their minds against anybody who didn't toe their line, he found that he was much more accepted by those that were outcasts, even though even though if the truth were known, and I know a lot of it, the leaders of the religious organizations are often more immoral by many gradations than the people that hold them in high esteem as being God's chosen. So I know I'm beating around the bush a little bit, but I've experienced some things in the last little while. Y'all take care.